A few years back, I had this really creepy experience with an older coworker of mine that still kind of shakes me to this day. It happened at this place I'd been working at for a couple of years at that point. The place was a small factory of sorts, with only less than a handful of employees, including myself. One day, though, my boss introduced us to this new, older guy that he'd brought in to start working in the other, newer side of the factory. You see, the factory where he worked had two different sides to it, one for beeswax and one side for wood production. My boss had brought him in because they went to church together, and the wood production on the other side had a religious significance. The new older coworker worked there with us for about 1 month before he approached me one day and introduced himself to me. He seemed like a nice guy, and even came back to give me a Hershey kiss not long after that. A couple months later, I got asked by our boss if I could go pick up my new older coworker, probably because his car was broken down or something. I agreed to it, so my boss asked me if it was okay to give the coworker my number so that we could coordinate via text. I said it was fine and went on my way, and brought him back to the factory with no problems. Soon after that, though, I started to get random and sporadic texts from him late at night. At first, the texts were just about us maybe hanging out soon, while simultaneously apologizing to me because he knew he was much older than I. But then, the texts started to get pretty pervy, and they would be as long as a mini book. The texts were just long, misspelled, random pervy compilations. I tried to just ignore the texts, but that only made them start coming more frequently. In the midst of all this one day, my roommates were scrounging for a ride to the casino, only a few miles from our house. I gave them a few dollars for a ride, and they said they'd find their own way back. So, imagine my surprise when they returned only a couple hours later with their own ride all right. Their ride was my creepy coworker. Not only was I creeped the hell out that this pervy jerk now knew where I lived, but I also didn't know how he came to give my roommates that ride. Was it just sheer coincidence, or something more? A few days after that, I went to visit a friend at his apartment that was located on our main street running through our small historic downtown area. When I came downstairs from his apartment, as he was located on the second floor, I made my usual turn, walking on the sidewalk in front of all the main street shops. As I walked past one of the shops that was maybe 2 doors down from my friend's apartment, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye. But it couldn't be, could it? To my great dismay, it was him, my creepy-ass older coworker, standing in the doorway of one of the shops and smiling creepily at me from under a black top hat. A couple of weeks after that little incident, I noticed him again as I left my friend's apartment. He was just standing on the sidewalk with that same creepy grin plastered on his gaunt face. Since I had already informed my friend after the last incident, I simply texted him real quick to let him know the creep was back. I got into my car and left after sending the text, so I didn't find out until later that the creepy coworker was gone by the time my friend got downstairs to the sidewalk. At that point, though, the texts were coming in even faster than before. He was threatening to come by my house if I didn't respond. Long, provocative texts dictating what he'd like to have happen between us if he did just happen to show up at my house. When I would see him during the day at work, though, he would act as though everything were normal, giving no hint of his nighttime persona. After seeing him yet again as I left my friend's apartment, I just so happened to overhear a couple of coworkers of mine standing around discussing how weird our new older coworker was. Right then, I stepped in and joined the convo, finally showing one of my other coworkers the text messages that the creep had been sending me. I had been working with that particular coworker for a few years, but I didn't know him too well. He was one of those people who came off kind of grumpy and distant. Still, I told him and my other coworker not to say anything. They both nodded in agreement, and we went our separate ways to finish up the day. When I came into work the next day, though, my boss immediately called me into his office. My boss told me he'd been informed of the situation and the texts, and he wanted to see my phone and read them. I told my boss that I didn't really want to get anyone in trouble, but he said that was besides the point, and my situation had to be addressed. My boss also stated that my older coworker had no right or reason to be texting me and talking to me the way he was talking to me. The boss must have had a pretty good talk with him, because all the crap stopped from the older coworker after that. The other grumpy coworker of mine apologized to me for saying something to the boss, but I completely understood, and I was actually pretty grateful to him for that. I should have been the one to take the initiative to talk to the boss about it, but I was just too chicken. Fortunately, though, that situation seemed to work out for all involved, because my life went on as usual, and everyone involved acted as though nothing had ever happened. Well, I can't really say that, because that situation actually caused the grumpy coworker and I to talk more, and we started dating. We were together for about 3 years, and then we got married. So, creepy old coworker, let's not ever meet again, or I think my husband will certainly have something to say about it. I'm a 19-year-old French female student, so please excuse my English. This event happened last week. I was heading to my apartment after seeing a friend. I took the tramway at 11:30 p.m. because I didn't feel comfortable walking at night. As soon as I sat, a man who was already sitting nearby came and sat in front of me. I had a very strange feeling about it, so I told my boyfriend by chat. Then I stood up to get out of the tram, but the man quickly got out after me. He was weirdly following me, not walking behind me, but next to me. I was getting very anxious, knowing something was wrong, so I continued to walk to the avenue I live on. I crossed the road, and he didn't, so I thought it was okay. But a few seconds after he crossed the road too, and was walking behind me. Then he passed me, and was walking in front of me, so I thought I was just getting paranoid, and he was just walking his way too. But near my building, he stopped and waited until I met him. He asked if I had a boyfriend and all, and I answered yes, sorry, good evening, as polite as I could be. He proceeded to leave in front of me, so I was walking slower for him to be far from me, and to make sure he didn't know I was almost home. I turned into the little pathway heading to the lobby of my building, but I was still anxious about this man, even though he had continued to walk. I thought I had put my keys in my pocket, but they were in my bag. I was shaking so much that I tried multiple times to grab them. I managed to get them, and I opened the magnetic door, but thought of closing the door immediately after me in case the man wanted to follow me. The door was closed, but the magnetic system wasn't on yet that the man was running to it and pushed it violently with horrific eyes looking at me. The door is made of glass, so I totally saw him. That's when I knew I was getting into real trouble, so without even thinking, I screamed as much as I could, and I think that's what saved my life. Immediately, the man ran to me, pushed me hard on the ground, and started to choke me really hard. I was too stunned because I wasn't prepared for such a violent assault. While he was choking me, I couldn't scream at all, or even breathe, and nobody was coming, so I really thought I was going to die, looking into his bulging eyes, staring directly into mine, with pure hate. I'm a small size, so I wasn't able to do something with my arms at all. I think it wasn't that long, but it felt like an eternity, and I lost consciousness for a moment. When I opened my eyes again, he had just ran out, and I saw the caretaker's wife beside me. The caretaker was chasing after the man, but didn't manage to get him. He came back and called the police that caught the man within 10 minutes thanks to our description. I really don't know why he did that to me, because when he attacked me, he didn't sexually assault me or rob me, which would have been easy. I can't understand that his only goal was to kill. I'll never be thankful enough to my caretaker, who came to help me and save my life, because nobody else in the building called the police or tried to help. The man was judged 3 days later, and is now in jail, but denied everything, even if me and the caretaker identified him, and that there are video proofs of him following me. So, to the man that tried to kill me, let's not meet again.